Hey, before we dive in, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss what happens next. My name is Jacob Rayner. I never believed in aliens, or at least I didn't until last summer. I was driving back from a business trip through Nevada, just me, the long stretch of Highway 95, and that low desert sun beating down on the windshield. The kind of emptiness that makes your skin crawl if you let your mind wander too far. I'd been seeing strange lights from the sky for weeks, but I chalked it up to military exercises. Experimental drones, flares, whatever. But that night, things took a turn I couldn't explain. I took a detour around a back road just to save some time, the kind of road where your phone loses signal in a heartbeat. It was quiet, too quiet. Then I saw it. A glow, not like a car's headlights, but circular, almost humming with its own energy. At first, I thought it was a military checkpoint. The desert's full of them. But there were no fences, no signs, just the light hovering a few feet off the ground, pulsing like it had a heartbeat. My stomach nodded. I slowed the truck, the engine whining in protest. Something about it screamed wrong. And then it moved like it noticed me. My truck felt like it had stalled, the dashboard lights flickering. I slammed the brakes, heart hammering, and the air outside shimmered, like heat waves but sharper, more unnatural. And suddenly, I knew. I wasn't just looking at a light. I was being watched. The thing started moving toward me, silently, but fast. Faster than any helicopter, faster than any plane I'd ever seen. And then, it was gone. But the ground where it hovered glowed like molten metal. I swear I could hear it thinking. I wanted to run, but my legs froze, my hands gripping the wheel like my life depended on it. Which, as it turns out, it did. The next thing I remember, I was in the sky. No truck, no road, just this blinding light around me, lifting me. The world stretched and warped, the desert shrinking into nothing. It was like gravity didn't exist anymore, and every instinct I had told me to fight, to resist, but I couldn't. I couldn't even scream. Then, just as suddenly, it stopped. I was lying on a metal surface, cool and smooth, but I couldn't see much. Everything around me was gray and silver, faint lines of light cutting across the walls. I could hear something moving, not footsteps, but a vibration in the air that made my chest hurt. I wasn't alone. I tried to sit up, and that's when I saw them. Figures tall, thin, too symmetrical, their heads slightly larger than human, eyes black and endless. I froze, paralyzed by the sheer wrongness of them. They didn't speak, they didn't need to. I could feel them scanning me, like a mental probe, and every thought I had wasn't private anymore. Panic rose in my throat, raw and bitter. I stumbled backward, hitting a wall that wasn't supposed to exist, and the figures stopped, tilting their heads almost curiously. Then the lights dimmed, the walls shifting. The surface I was on began to move, an elevator or some kind of platform. I had no idea where it was going. Hours, maybe minutes passed. Time stretched in impossible ways. I tried to remember everything I knew about physics, biology, human limits, anything to make sense of what was happening, but nothing applied here. Nothing at all. And then the first one approached me. Its fingers, or whatever you want to call them, were long, delicate, almost fragile. Yet when it touched my arm, I felt like every nerve ending in my body was being rewritten. I screamed, but it wasn't a sound. It was pain and thought, a mix that left me trembling. And then it pulled back. I expected torture, but instead came a question, or something like a question. A surge of information I didn't understand, images of stars, planets, and symbols my brain couldn't decode fast enough. I realized they weren't just observing. They were communicating, probing my mind for something. And then, abruptly, the platform shifted again, the room folding around me like paper. I lost track of direction, of up and down. Somewhere deep in me, a voice, my own, my real one, yelled at me to resist, to escape, to survive. And I knew I had to, because I had seen the lights outside, hovering over the desert. If I didn't get back, if I didn't run, I'd vanish. They weren't going to just let me go. Not like this. The platform stopped abruptly, and I stumbled, barely keeping my balance. The room around me was no longer gray and sterile. It was alive with faint currents of light running along the walls, twisting like veins. I could feel the presence of the figures behind me, always there, always observing. My first thought was to run. But where? Every door I tried led to another corridor, identical and disorienting. Then I noticed a panel on the wall, something that looked almost human-made, glowing faintly with symbols I didn't understand. Instinctively, I reached out, my fingers brushing the surface. The panel pulsed under my touch, and suddenly a map, or something like a map, flashed in my mind. Paths, rooms, even the faint outlines of what I guessed were other humans, or maybe they weren't. My pulse raced. I had no idea what was real anymore. My survival instincts screamed at me to memorize it. I moved down the corridor, trying to keep calm, trying to keep my fear from freezing me. Every corner I turned, every shadow I passed, I felt them. Not behind me, around me, inside me, like the air itself was alive with intent. I wanted to scream again, but my throat was dry, my voice a memory. Then I heard a noise, soft at first, like metal scraping, but it grew louder, sharper, closer. Something was coming. I ducked into a side chamber, a place that seemed like storage. Strange containers lined the walls, filled with liquids that shimmered like mercury. Inside some, I could swear I saw shapes, faces, bodies, or illusions my brain wanted to see. I forced myself to look away. That's when I realized I wasn't alone in this room. One of them was there. It stood still, motionless, but I felt it before I saw it. It was studying me again, probing my fear. My heart hammered in my chest, and I realized I had a choice. Stand and risk whatever this thing could do, or run and risk getting lost in the labyrinth. I ran. I don't know how fast or for how long, just until my legs gave out and I collapsed against another wall. My chest burned. My lungs screamed. But then I saw it. A hatch in the floor, just big enough to crawl through. I didn't hesitate. I dropped into darkness, hitting the ground hard, scraping my knees, but I kept moving. The tunnel twisted, narrow, and smelled metallic, like blood and ozone. I had no idea where it led, but anything had to be better than the observation deck above. Then the light appeared again, faint but steady, glowing through a crack ahead. I crawled toward it, praying it led to the outside, to freedom. And then I saw the desert through the opening. The stars were cold and distant, the moon low on the horizon. I was free, almost. That's when I heard it, the low hum again, growing louder, vibrating through the walls, through the ground. The hatch wasn't as hidden as I thought. I scrambled out, feeling sand against my palms, the cool night air hitting my face. I ran blindly into the desert, hearing nothing but my own ragged breathing and the strange mechanical thrum closing in. Behind me, a light appeared in the sky, enormous and impossibly fast. It wasn't just a light anymore. It was them searching, scanning, knowing exactly where I was. I zigzagged, trying to use the terrain to my advantage, but I realized quickly that nothing in this desert would slow them down. And then, just when I thought I was about to be caught, something shifted in my perception. I didn't understand it at first. A memory? A warning? My hands brushed against a strange rock formation that vibrated under my touch, and suddenly the hum faltered. The light hesitated. I realized I wasn't just running blindly. Somehow, the platform had given me more than just a map. I felt a connection, fleeting but powerful, like I could sense the currents of energy guiding me. I ran faster, my legs burning, my lungs screaming, and for a moment, the stars above the desert seemed to twist, almost in response to me. And then I saw the highway, the familiar asphalt stretching into the distance. Freedom was close, but I knew they weren't done with me. Not yet. Somewhere in that vast desert, in the empty stretch of Nevada between nowhere and the zone, they were waiting, watching, and I could still feel their presence like a weight pressing down on the back of my skull. I had escaped, but the hunt had just begun. By the time I stumbled onto Highway 95, my truck was nowhere in sight. My mind was still spinning, still half-trapped in that metallic, pulsating maze of the craft. I flagged down the first car I saw, a beat-up pickup driven by an older man with a cigarette dangling from his lips. I don't remember what I said at first. Probably some incoherent mix of help and aliens and Zone 51. He didn't ask questions. He just loaded me into the cab and drove. Every mile felt like a lifetime, my chest still tight from running through the desert. I couldn't stop looking over my shoulder, even though nothing was there. Yet, when we reached a gas station a few miles outside of Rachel, Nevada, I finally forced myself to breathe, to slow down, to think. I knew I had to get somewhere safe, somewhere I could process what happened. The man eyed me curiously but didn't press. I paid him off and left, heading for the only place I could think of: Las Vegas. I needed anonymity, witnesses, people who wouldn't just dismiss me as crazy. But even as the neon lights of the Strip glared into my exhausted eyes, the sense of being hunted never left me. I checked into a cheap hotel under a fake name, hoping to lose myself in the crowds, in the chaos, in the noise. I showered, tried to eat, tried to sleep, but nothing felt normal. The first night, I dreamt of the craft again, the figures gliding toward me silently, their black eyes drilling into my skull. I woke up in a cold sweat, and that same pulsing hum lingered in my ears, faint but unmistakable. Days passed. I tried to contact friends, family, anyone who could believe me. But when I spoke, I felt a subtle pressure in my head, almost like a whisper I couldn't place. And that's when I noticed the changes. At first, they were small. My vision occasionally blurred in a strange way, lights bending unnaturally, patterns in the shadows that moved when I blinked. Then came the dreams, visions of places I had never been, of machinery and symbols I didn't understand, of a star map that seemed to embed itself in my memory without my consent. I tried to document it, write it down, understand it scientifically, but the more I tried, the more the memories pushed back, as if the craft had implanted something inside me I wasn't meant to comprehend. One night, I went to a diner to calm my nerves, and that's when I saw it. A figure, leaning against a lamppost outside, too tall, too thin, with eyes that glimmered like black mirrors. My stomach dropped. I tried to convince myself it was a trick of the neon lights, a reflection in the window, anything, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was watching me, scanning me, waiting. I left immediately, running through the streets of Las Vegas like a man possessed. I knew then that escaping the craft didn't mean I was free. They were still out there. Somehow, wherever I went, whatever I did, I was connected to them, like a wire buried deep inside me, leading them straight to my mind. Over the next weeks, I learned to move carefully. I avoided open spaces at night. I changed hotel rooms. I didn't speak to anyone about what I saw. But the visions persisted, the dreams, the symbols, the pull toward something. Then, one night, my phone buzzed. No number, no text, just a single image. A glowing circular pattern, identical to the one I'd seen hovering over the desert. My blood ran cold. They had found a way to reach me. And that's when I realized I wasn't just being watched anymore. I was being guided, herded, tested. And the purpose? I didn't know yet, but it terrified me. I knew one thing for certain. If I didn't figure out what they wanted, what they had done to me, the next encounter might not be something I could survive. I started to retrace my steps, trying to find patterns in their appearances, in the places the visions drew me. It became an obsession, a map in my head connecting deserts, highways, isolated towns, and even abandoned military installations, including the Forbidden Zone 51 itself. Something inside me pulled toward it, a combination of fear and understanding I couldn't explain. And then it happened. I received an untraceable email, a simple line of text: "Come back." Not a threat, not a question, an invitation. My rational mind screamed at me to ignore it, to disappear, to vanish somewhere no one could find me. But a deeper, more primal part of me, the part that had survived the craft, the part that had felt the pulse of its platform beneath my fingers, knew I couldn't refuse. They wanted me, and I would go. I didn't know if it was a trap or an answer, but I had no choice. This was the path laid out for me the moment I saw that first light over the Nevada desert. Whatever awaited me back at the zone, I would face it, because I had already been changed. And running from them was no longer an option. The desert stretched endlessly as I drove toward the coordinates the email had led me to. My hands gripped the wheel so tightly my knuckles were white. The highway felt alien, even though I had driven it countless times. The sun was low, bleeding gold across the rocky landscape, casting shadows that seemed too long, too deliberate. My mind raced with every possibility. Ambush, capture, death. But beneath the fear was a strange, undeniable pull. I couldn't explain it. It was like the same force that had guided me through the craft was calling me back. As I neared the perimeter of Zone 51, the road disappeared into a canyon I hadn't noticed before. A haze hung in the air, shimmering as though reality itself was bending. I stopped the car, heart pounding, and saw it. A glowing circle hovering silently above the desert floor, larger than the first one I had ever seen. The hum filled the air, vibrating through my chest, through my bones, through the very ground beneath me. I stepped out of the car. The air was thick, electric, impossible to breathe comfortably. Then the figures appeared, not one, but dozens, emerging from the light as if they had risen from the desert itself. They surrounded me, their black eyes endless and knowing. I felt no threat from them, only curiosity and expectation. And then the light shifted, splitting open like a door, revealing the interior I had seen before. I hesitated, but the pull, the connection, the knowledge I had carried since my first encounter drove me forward. I stepped inside. Time ceased. The familiar metallic walls pulsed softly around me, but now they weren't cold. They felt alive. The figures approached, but this time not in menace. I realized they weren't abductors, they were guides, teachers, observers of something far beyond my understanding. One reached out, and when its fingers brushed my forehead, I didn't feel pain. I felt clarity. Images flooded my mind. Stars, civilizations, the delicate threads of life and intelligence across the universe. They showed me that I had been chosen, not at random, but because I had survived, because I could carry the knowledge they intended to share. My body and mind felt altered, expanded, stretched to limits I had never imagined. I could see patterns in the desert below, networks of energy connecting everything, humans, animals, machines, even the lights of the cities miles away. I understood them in a way that terrified and exhilarated me at once. Then came the final message, not in words, but in pure thought. The choice is yours. Return or remain with us and see beyond the veil. I looked at the endless void outside the craft, the desert small beneath me, and I felt the full weight of the decision. Humanity, my past life, the world I knew, it all waited for me below. But the pull of understanding, the promise of knowledge and perspective beyond human limits, was undeniable. I chose to return. The figures acknowledged my decision, and the craft began its descent, glowing brighter and warmer than I had ever seen. In an instant, I was back in the Nevada desert, standing on the sand, the craft hovering momentarily before vanishing into the sky like a falling star. My body and mind carried the change. I knew things I couldn't explain, patterns I could sense, and the knowledge that the universe was far stranger and more alive than anyone could imagine. I returned to civilization, to the mundane life I had once known, but I was not the same man. I moved carefully, quietly, always aware of the connection that remained, a tether between me and the stars, between me and them. And sometimes, in the quiet hours of the night, I look up at the sky, and I feel the hum again, soft, distant, patient. They are still out there, still watching, still waiting. And I know, beyond doubt, that the desert, the zone, the lights, they are only the beginning. My life will never be mine alone again.